And welcome back to another episode of Around Comics. I'm Brian Salazar. With me is Christopher Niesman, or Ted Lasso.
As Ted would say, keep calm and get fired up. My
Ted Lasso. Everybody's finding Ted Lasso now. It's the to me, Ted Lasso is it's this year's Schitt's Creek. It's like the late blooming show that everybody's kind of coming around to now.
It is, yeah. It's a show that actually, Sal, it made me want to be a better person.
Do you know who turned me on? You will not believe. I will give you three guesses. And you know this person who turned me on to Ted Lasso.
Andy Huck.
No.
Eddie Garcia.
No.
Jerry Garcia.
Yes. No, not Jerry Garcia.
Am I in the ballpark?
Stu.
Oh.
You believe that? Yeah, he loved it, and he's like, you have to watch it. It's so good. It's such a heartwarming, story. Blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out.
It is. And, I can. Yeah, it's. I can absolutely see that. But it is the hot cup of brown liquid that I need to curl up to and enjoy.
I see. Here's my I did enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. It was very fun and funny.
It's cute. And it's really
cute. It's very cute. It's very sweet. He's a lovable character. And Sudeikis, right? That's his name. Andy Sudeikis. He is so good. But I like him so much when he's kind of a dick.
Oh, have you watched the original NBC spots that spun out of?
I don't think so.
So how that originated, right?
I have no idea. I just watched it on
look it up on YouTube. When NBC Sports got the rights to play Premier League soccer games here in the US, they did this series of Jason Sudeikis spots as this fictional character, Ted Lasso, who was a football coach that was hired to go and coach or manage a Premier League soccer club. And in the spots, he's even more clueless and a little bit of a dick.
See, I like Jason Sudeikis when he's kind of a dick. Well, I don't remember the movie he did. It's a family name. It's him and Rachel from Friends and
is it not Bad Bosses? Was it Bad Bosses?
No, that was another one. I like him in that, but this is the one where he's basically kind of a dirtbag, and he's a low-level drug dealer, but then he ends up having to drive a minivan or a Winnebago to Mexico to pick up drugs, and he's just such a piece of shit asshole in that, but trying to be the dad, it's just such a great dichotomy that he pulls off. He's just so good at he's so good at being that sort of dad figure, but with an edge. If they were going to redo Christmas Vacation, which they did and it failed miserably, it should have been him. He should have been that character.
Because Chevy Chase could play the lovable dad guy, but also someone that can wake up having snorted cocaine off of a stripper's ass.
Absolutely. And that's I think Sudeikis is kind of, and that was the only thing with Ted Lasso, was he was so sweet, you know what I mean, and so sort of positive and
character.
No, he never went bad. He never broke bad.
That character is a straight line from A to Z, and actually, and we'll get on to comics talk. But if you're out there and you need just something a little uplifting at the end of what has been a difficult year for a lot of people, it's really cute. It's really, as I described it, it's the fucking ray of sunshine that we all need in our life right now. But Apple picked it up, not for not just season 2, but season 2 and 3. So it's got at least 2 more seasons coming. So fun stuff. Yeah.
Good.
Speaking of TV, and we're waiting for Tom to get his kids put down or down.
To put his kids down.
He's putting his kids down. Pennyworth, season 2.
I have not jumped on that yet. I have to resubscribe to
re-up your epics.
Because I watched that and I'm like, there's nothing else on that channel I want to watch.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna drop it, and I'll go back when Pennyworth is back. And
I will do this. It is good because it's Pennyworth. London, way different than any sort of DC or Batman canon that I've ever read or seen before. They really, I mean, they're completely off book right now, which is very
I'm
interesting.
fine with that. Like I said, the first season, the only thing that disappointed me is that they actually like had any connection to Batman. I didn't need it to like really be connected to Batman in any way. I was saying with like the Joker, like I said the same thing about the Joker movie. Like the fact that they said Gotham was disappointing. Like it didn't need to ever be said in that movie, and it was just.
I
Like,
think the only passing glance at it is that it's Thomas and Martha Wayne, and the interesting thing about that is that you just know that eventually they do get together, and you know that eventually Alfred does go back with them to America, and so
right.
it's whatever it's leading up to with that. But in this, it's like London is absolutely fractured in no way that is historically accurate. It is.
Well, they had laid that groundwork in the first season of just like, this is an alternate reality, this is an alternate history. It's not historically correct, which
this one,
the Batman verse, it shouldn't really be.
Well, it's very, very Berlin. It's very Germany 1930s, where the fascists are by military force taking over England, and so that's the world that that has evolved from the last episode. You picked this up like in the first 5 minutes, so it's good. It's going to be an interesting season. So,
did you ever watch Man in the High Castle?
That's one of those that I got about 3/4 of the way through the first season, and then just kind of stopped.
It's really well done, but it's also
brilliant to start with, and then kind of
it gets tough. It gets tough to watch for sure. Yeah, and unfortunately, because it really Philip K. Dick, based on a Philip K. Dick novel, but brilliantly. The as far as what they did with it, I thought the first season was really good. But yeah, you're right. It gets tougher and tougher. It's just like, what is going on here? What I'm not sure. Yeah. There's like so many storylines and so many strange things going on. But unfortunately, I can't say that it gets better or easier. And
I know people that love that show, and I should love that show.
Right.
It's alternate reality where the Nazis win and it's freedom fighters in the
because
US.
You're a German fascist, and that's what you hope. If only
fight against fascism. No, but then the whole Zapruder film and maybe an alternate, reality out there where things didn't happen that way. Blah blah. Yeah,
Zapruder film.
Huh?
Isn't that? No. Zapruder film was the Kennedy assassination. That's much later in history.
Isn't that part of Man in the High Castle? Is that they find that film?
Well, they find a film. The Man in the High Castle is who is making is releasing these films from but it's not the Zapruder.
I thought the Zapruder film was part of that.
No,
it's been like 5 years since I watched the first season. I thought that was one of the books that they found, or that she found, or something.
No, she finds the first one is like showing that it's showing our reality where we won the war,
the Kennedy assassination or not.
I don't think so. I don't remember that part, that being part of it. I think you're confusing that with the Stephen King. Did you watch that? The Stephen King
2163.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Which is really good.
Yeah, that's Franco, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, good stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm taking notes, and I swear to God, I'm going to send show notes this week.
So I have a question for you. I know we don't really. Oh, we got Tom. Transient Tom.
All right, Tom, we're done talking about Transmet. We're good.
Oh, no.
Good night, and we'll be back next week in...
No, I have a question. So I was just going to ask Chris a question, but you're here too, so I'll ask you too. I know we don't really talk about comic book news that much, but I read this, and I get it that comic book websites are, just like any other sort of media website where they're just trying to get people to click on stuff.
Get them clicks.
Yeah, but there was this weird article I read today. I think it was like CBR or something, and it was about how because of Warner Brothers announcing that in 2021, like all their stuff is going to be on HBO Max, that they finally have like the leg up on the MCU and the MC universe, and how they're trying to poise themselves to be the king of the superhero genre. And my thing was just like, is that even a reality? Like, as far as like, does anyone at Warner Brothers even give a shit about that? No. Like, that's just like a fan.
No.
Yeah,
right. Like, it's just such a silly like fan. No. There's this competition. I mean, Warner Brothers just cares if you're buying their fucking movies. They don't, like.
They're like, MCU.
Yeah.
We gotta beat those guys.
Yeah, right.
That is ticket sales.
It's just such an. I read it. I'm like, really? Is this like?
Finally,
I mean, I know Marvel and DC. There was always sort of that playful competition, and even like Casada and who was
at the time?
Those guys would, they would kind of keep that friendly rivalry kind of going. But I mean, really, like, do you think executives at fucking Warner Brother are like, we have to take down the MCU?
Finally, we've done it, everyone.
Do you think the owners, the Green Bay Packers and the owners of the Chicago Bears, really give two fucks who beats who on any given day?
The owners of the Packers do.
Well, it's because
they're the fan.
It's.
I don't think the owners of the Bears know that there's a game going on.
I don't think they even live in Chicago.
He's 300 years old, and
but I mean, it's stop treating Marvel and DC like sports teams. It's stop treating them like one set of comic books wears a jersey and that's different than the other set. It is devolved and has devolved for a long time into the stupidest, most juvenile fan service. Who cares?
Listen, dickwads, we need to figure out a way to beat the MCU, and the only way to do that is to release all our movies.
Yes. The only way to do that is Wonder Woman 1984 coming to you on HBO Max.
The only way to do that is to give Zack Snyder $100 million to make a boring movie longer.
Take that, Spider-Man 3.
Was the one thing I walked away from Justice League thinking was, God, if only there was more.
This was just too short.
I didn't get to spend enough time with these characters.
I'm sure it's going to be a magnum opus. It's going to be Orson Welles.
Yeah, I'm not going to take the cheap shot. I was going to say, did he just make it longer by slowing down all the scenes?
That could be.
But finally, we can
just
get
more.
That.
I needed more slow motion. There wasn't enough slow motion.
You know what's funny? It always reminds me of there's this really great YouTube video about how editing saved the original Star Wars, and it's about like, here's what the script was and like the rough cut, and here's what the editor did to like fix it, right? And like all the stuff with like Luke and his friends on the planet at the beginning was super fucking slow and nobody cared. So the editor's like, don't show Luke until you have the droids. There's no reason for him to be in the story. It doesn't add anything. Like all this stuff, right?
I think you could see
they had footage of him
but it's like it's like a video about editing and like, hey, there's this stuff, and this is why this scene's deleted. It's like nothing against the scene. It's just like
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You take it out, right? And then you see people, write things about like, if only those deleted scenes were in the movie. Dude, and I was like, people purposely took those scenes out because
people much smarter than you and knowing what that was the thing. Like I just started rewatching the Lord of the Rings trilogy and like the super extended, I don't know, director's cut, like jerk off, version. And every time a scene would come up, then I'm like, oh, I don't remember this scene. And then, this must be an extended scene. And I'd watch it and go, yeah, I understand why they cut that out of this movie, because that scene was a piece of shit. Like there was no reason for that to be in this movie. It was a dumb scene. It didn't, and that's usually whenever I watch like extended scenes when I used to on Blu-ray DVDs, they'd have like stuff they cut out. It's like, yeah, it was unnecessary because, I'm sure when you're making a film, it's like, you're just shooting a bunch of stuff and then. Yeah, it's like anything else. It's if you talk to writers, it's like your first draft is going to be garbage, and then it's the editing is really the writing. Like that's the real, that's
I believe the saying is you write a movie 3 times the script when you're shooting it, and then when you edit it. So it's like it's just funny because I've seen. It's like when I sent you guys the YouTube video for that, because what'll happen is when you watch that video, which is really interesting, you'll get fed videos of other people that are like, let's break down these deleted scenes and why they should have been in Star Wars.
Should have kept this.
Well, I mean, there is something cool for especially iconic films like that, where it's like, you know what, as a fan, I would love to see deleted scenes. It's for a film I've seen probably 20 or 30 times in my life. It's neat to see what was on the editing room floor, just from an interest.
Sure. Oh, sure.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But saying, that is sacred film.
But it's the thing in our culture where we want more of everything. The solution to I love this movie so much. I want it to be longer, regardless of whether it's good or not. I just want more, or I just want it to be longer. Like just
the one that always drives me nuts is like, oh, I love this movie, so I'm gonna take a nugget from it, and then I'm gonna make a whole nother movie about that, like backstory part. You know what I mean? And now I'm gonna tell the origins, and it's like it usually never fucking works. It's usually never. It's like I don't need to know.
We were talking about it earlier. Who thought a fucking TV show about Alfred Pennyworth would be interesting? And it's freaking awesome.
Oh. It is good, but it's yeah. I mean, it can be done well, but I don't think just because you want more of something it means that it's going to be good. It's like you're so ravenous for something. It's like, well, yeah, but you're ravenous for it because the writer or whoever the filmmaker
you liked the original one enough because they made it good.
I mean, do you feel that with Star Wars, with all of the big Star Wars and MCU announcements from last week, where they announced something like 30 movies and 85 TV shows or something.
I mean, Disney they can't all be good. They're not all going to be awesome. I mean, there's no way.
It's also just like Disney makes kids movies.
Not anymore, buddy. Not anymore.
But also, like, yeah, Disney just fucking pumps shit out. They always have. Like, now there's just
one like place. 7 Lion King movies.
Yeah. Now there's just one place to see it all. You just never saw all of it or didn't have it all available. Like Disney's always been pumping out.
I didn't even watch the announcements. I'm just like, I've got a Disney Plus subscription. I'll watch them whenever they come out. That's fine. Yeah,
and it'll be like anything. It'll take me 4 years to get
exactly. It's like I'll watch WandaVision.
It's
about that. I don't know anything after that.
Well, I mean, it's always the people involved. Like Favreau. If Jon Favreau's doing it, it's probably going to be pretty good because you know what? He's like a really good filmmaker, and he cares about characters and story development and doesn't, and he's sort of strong enough in the industry where he doesn't have to just kowtow to fandom or kowtow to anyone, and he can kind of just do what he wants, and it's pretty good. But, how many of these are going to be handed to somebody that either, doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the skill, doesn't, you know what I mean?
It's jobs.
Yeah.
Give them writers jobs. Any entertainment.
but it's cool. I'd rather have that than like not, you know. So yeah, it's gonna be neat. So
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't
like Winter Soldier and the Falcon may suck, but it's neat that it's being made.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at, I mean, even just like all the Marvel movies, they're not all great. All the Star Wars movies, they're not all great. All, you know what I mean? Like, you hope for those gems that are the Mandalorian. You know, you hope for, you know, to me is like, okay, well, if Favreau or the Russo brothers or James Gunn is involved, I'll probably like it. If it's, you know, some, you know, director I'd never heard of that came off of like, you know, videos and some independent film, it might suck because they don't know what the fuck they're doing and they're handed something, you know, for reasons other than, you know, skill and ability. I don't know. And so I don't know. Who knows? We have a comment from Neil Johnson in regards to all this. He says, I like that the Coen brothers director's cut of Blood Simple was shorter. I didn't know that.
That's good. I like that. That is good. Yeah.
Why? Because they fucking know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's a very Coen brothers thing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Like actually, we would take this out.
Yeah,
No,
we would have
moving forever.
God, I was watching the Ballad of Buster Scruggs again.
Yeah.
And Andy Parks mentioned it like when that first came out. He's like, how did that movie not win or get nominated for anything? Like, it is so fucking good. Every one of those stories is so goddamn good and well done. And it's like, how did it didn't get nominated for anything? And like, nobody even paid attention to it. It was so good.
Yeah, it's Netflix.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. We were actually having a meeting today at work, and we're in the conference room, and someone on one of the monitors there was a Fargo preview on as we're trying to hook a computer up to it, and then someone mentioned Raising Arizona, and one of our sales guys was like, oh, I've never seen Raising Arizona, and you heard like 4 people go, what the hell? You've never seen Raising Arizona? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can understand that's, you know,
he was younger
that, or just like,
yeah,
I think Coen brothers are niche to a certain degree.
It's big niche.
I mean, some of their films have become hugely popular, obviously, but I think, you know.
What's your favorite Coen brothers film?
Shit, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Big
I mean,
Lebowski.
I was gonna say probably Big Lebowski.
Probably Big Lebowski. It's. So
I'm not gonna pretend that it's.
I mean,
I like other ones.
I want to say Barton Fink and act like an intellectual, but yeah, it's Big Lebowski.
Big Lebowski, like pound for pound, has more jokes in it. Like, it's incredible. I mean, it's
fucking nice.
Yeah,
it's a great movie.
Yeah, probably Lebowski.
Are they making any of the Disney stuff? The Coen brothers?
I wish. I hope they're making. I want a Coen brothers Fantastic Four movie. That's what
I've got a toe around here, by the way.
You have a toe. You
need
a toe. I don't even know all the Coen brothers movies. Let's see.
Toe? I can get you a toe.
I can get you a toe this afternoon. Fucking amateurs, dude. I got a buddy of mine that will be on a chat, and it will inevitably break down into nothing but we're literally communicating in Big Lebowski quotes. It's just back and forth. There's like no other communication going on. Everything just becomes Big Lebowski jokes.
But, it can't. It's language. It's brilliant.
I do love No Country for Old Men.
It's great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all their movies are good. Come on.
Well, Lebowski's about 23 years old?
1998.
You know what else came out in 1998?
Oh, hey, good segue.
Transmetropolitan.
That was a good segue, Chris. Nicely done, my friend.
So I went back into the long boxes and found my trade, which does have a number 1 on it. So this is Sal's pick.
Is that the first trade or the second trade of the
There's
I mean, is that the
multiple versions, yeah.
first printing or the second printing? The first printing of the trade was only 3 issues.
Yep.
So this is 1 through 6.
So that would be the second edition of the trades.
Second edition. So yes,
Yeah.
we're talking about the first 3 issues on this one. Or are we talking about the first 6?
I read the first 6.
Okay, I was going to say I may have over prepared.
No, that's fine. I read the first 6.
But yeah, I may have the original one, which they may not even call them trades then, but it was the first story arc, which was 3 issues. The
Right.
Back Street.
Yeah, it's a weird, like you have a very clearly defined story arc in the first 3 issues, and then it kind of breaks into these individual issues. There's still something going on, like an overarching narrative, but they're really one and dones each one, kind of, with it.
Yeah. So why did you pick Transmet?
Why did I pick it?
Yeah.
Well, we had come off, we read Tom's pick, which was political, and I just thought I hadn't read it in a long time. I remember enjoying it when I read it, and I thought it might be, like the Prez was incredibly prophetic, like unbelievably. I thought maybe that this would be as well, because it's amazing if you go back through science fiction literature, whether it's comics or novels or even movies, and it's like inevitably you find these connections to 20, 30, 40 years later. All of a sudden it's like, wow, these were really prophetic. They knew, it's like these writers are able to kind of look at what's going on and exaggerate it.
Harlan Ellison.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And this is no different. I was really shocked. I'll be honest, I completely forgot what the storyline was. The first few issues, I had no idea going into it. I remembered it once I started reading it, but I was like, oh wow, I had no clue that it was about transhumanism, which is such a strange, coincidence in this day and age that we're sort of dealing with a lot of the same, conversations that he touches on. Now it's different in Transmet because it's about humans converting to their DNA to alien DNA and being sort of half human, half alien, wanting to be this new life form. But I mean, I think it's an interesting comparison to kind of the trans rights talk and conversations that are happening today. For people that haven't read this, if you haven't read this book, basically Warren Ellis has taken Hunter S. Thompson, the very famous writer, journalist, and sort of created this comic book character, Spider Jerusalem, who is in a cyberpunk future of the world that we live in. And he's this sort of he was a very famous writer for a book he wrote about a politician. Fame sort of overwhelmed him, and he went to live on a mountaintop and just sort of drink and do drugs and get away from everything. And he did that for 5 years, but then he finds out that he has a contract for 2 books that he owes this publisher. And so he decides he has to go back into the city because it was really the only place he could write. He needed the city and the craziness, the chaos that the city provided to fuel his imagination to write about it. And he just couldn't do that anywhere else for whatever reason. As much as he hated it in a lot of ways, and he despises the city, although I think Spider Jerusalem sort of secretly loves it as well, or at least parts of it, the chaos of it. He sort of hates going back into the city, but he does. And his first story that he ends up deciding that he needs a job if he's going to support himself long enough to try and write these books that he owes. And so he gets a job with an old friend that now is an editor for a newspaper, basically, but it's a, online newspaper, but which is interesting because this is 1998. So, one of those things where like all the news is online now. Everybody just looks at their feeds, and you know, in 1998, that wasn't really that, you know,
No, it wasn't. It was
much of a thing. And so his first article that he writes is about these transhumans that are they lock down a part of the city and they blockade off like city blocks, and they kick everyone out that isn't a transhuman, or
like Seattle.
very much like Seattle. They take over this thing. But the way that Ellis kind of you know, looks at it from Spider's perspective, you know, and Spider makes it very clear, I think, in the second or third issue, of, you know, his idea is that everyone is a piece of shit, basically. Like, it doesn't matter what you say you're about. It doesn't matter what you profess to believe in, or your goals, or if you're, you know, trying to, you know, be a good person. Basically, everyone in this world is a piece of shit other than him. And even he's a piece of shit, but at least he's honest about it. And everyone else is a hypocrite. And I think it is a very Hunter S. Thompson sort of thing. I mean, Hunter, you know, was very misanthropic. He in a lot of ways hated the world, I think, and hated the people in it, and hated the way people treated each other. And I think Spider very much is the same way.
Yeah.
But he doesn't give anybody a break. He doesn't, you know.
Hunter had an unrelenting drive to discover the truth. And the truth that he found is that people were horrible.
Well, I actually think I think Spider actually is a much more empathetic character than Hunter S. Thompson is in reality. And I think Spider, you know, in these issues, he has a lot of disdain for people in power, or people who want power. And I think he actually likes people. Like, when he's in the city, he has compassion for the people that are manipulated by those in power. And like,
yes, he absolutely, he does have compassion for people that have no power.
Yeah. So it's like, to me, it's like a finer line of like, he distrusts anybody who seeks power or influence or wants to accumulate it, because he believes, you know, and I think reality tells you that it's often true. People who seek out power and influence usually don't have the greatest motives for it, right? And I think, you know, what's interesting too about the book, though, you know, to me, I remember when I first read it, I thought it was much more Hunter S. Thompson than I read this time. I feel like Hunter S. Thompson's like the jumping off point, because I think there's something really different about the way he treats Spider, you know, like the idea of everything that Hunter S. Thompson ever wrote, right? Like, it's from a different time. It's from like a different stage of journalism, where everything he wrote about, when you read something that he wrote, it already happened. So like what he is talking about, you know, like my favorite Hunter S. Thompson book is Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72, where he writes around the 1972 election, right? And even when that book came out at the time, that election, or it was serialized, right? So he's telling you about stuff that's already happened, right? Mm-hmm. And what's different is, and what's interesting, and like the part of this book that's so prescient, is the idea that Spider's telling you, like when he's in the middle of the riot and he's telling people what's happening,
he's live
telling
streaming
people what's happening right now. Yeah. You know, like, and there's like a subtle difference between those things that I didn't think was a big deal when I first read it, because I didn't realize what a difference that was. And now that I live in a world, right? We live in a world where everything, when events happen, people are telling about it as they happen, right? You don't have to read the news. You don't have to read about it a week later. Like, you know about it instantaneously, you know?
When he first gets into the city, there's a scene where he's just sort of commenting as he's walking from his car to the newspaper. And there's a scene where he says, a troupe of Tuvan throat singers stopping to make steeps music just because they feel like it. Feed site listeners milling around, recording them, saving a few unique minutes for everybody. I'm like, holy shit, that is the reality that we live in right now. Is like,
Yeah.
you know, before COVID, obviously, of just like people doing stuff spontaneously on the street in New York and 17 people videotaping it with their phone and live streaming it. And it's just like, fuck, this is really prophetic.
So to me, like reading it this time, I really feels to me like it's a comic book Hunter S. Thompson, right? It's like,
sure.
Yeah, well, but like in the truest sense of like he, you know, in a sense, Hunter S. Thompson never came down from the mountain once he went up there. Like he kind of stayed there, right? And like the character comes down and he's
like John Denver's house
in the middle of stuff. He's doing comic book stuff where he's like punching bad guys, you know, and it's a very like, it's interesting to read it now. I think living in a world that's much closer media wise of like it's really interesting because it's like you could go into a lot of things about Hunter S. Thompson and like you know, the reason why he was so, you know, so interesting is because, you know, he came from a time period where journalists told the truth, right? And that was so somebody who was a journalist who would mix in things that were true,
fiction,
was
his own fiction,
was mind blowing. You know, of like, oh wow, like what he was doing is like he's trying to capture the vibe of something far more than he's trying to capture like the minute by minute, like what's Nixon doing. Like he's trying to capture what it feels like.
Sure.
That Nixon's going to win, and you know Nixon's going to win, and what does that mean, and all that, right? And to see, you know, in a modern world where, you know, so many people don't think the media tells the truth. Like there's not that assumption anymore of like a journalist tells us what happens. And now here's this one guy who's telling us what's happening, but he's mixing in Edward Muskie's addicted to hallucinogens, right? And like that's like an insane thing, right? Like at that time period, because that's just not what journalism is, you know. So it's like really weird to read this book.
Journalism, right?
Yeah, where it's like it's interesting too because it's a lot about like truth and what truth is and what journalism is. Like it's like weirdly, it's also like weirdly dated in a way of like who would write a column, you know? But like if you just change it to like a blog, it's the same thing, right? So it's like in that little weird space in between, where like
well, there's still columnists though.
There's still columnists, but like no, like
but you know, I had a Rolling Stone subscription partly because I wanted to read what.
But that's not what
writing.
That's not what the cool writers are doing. You know, like it's like that one of those weird things where you're like, oh yeah, this came out in '98, but it was amazingly, amazingly prescient in a lot of ways, and just,
it certainly was.
Yeah, just like shockingly, like oh yeah, like that is how we now, you know, when he's just watching TV, like what's on TV. And it's like, yeah, that's what TV is. Like
one of the right, 2,000 channels, and you know,
it's all just weird manipulation.
It's like, you know, tells his home computer assistant, which had created its own drugs, which is amazing. Just, you know, do randomize and roll 10 seconds at a time, and it's almost like a police scanner for him to find out what's going on for him to find his first story.
But it's like it's Twitter, right? Like it's like we live now in a world where we get you open up the pipe
overload
the whole way, man, and you just get it all. Yeah, so it's remarkable.
I went on to Twitter for the first time in like 6 months today. Spent like 10 minutes on there, and I'm just like, I've got to get out of here. This is
just take a deep drink from the hose.
It's one of the things I was a little disappointed with the initial story arc was, you know, the scene where he's up on the rooftop and he's live streaming this story, and one of the interesting things, like I started thinking about, was like, man, you know, as a journalist, it has to be such a bizarre thing to sit there and witness horrors and travesties and all this stuff and not and your job is to just report it. You know what I mean? Like you're not part of it. You just have to sit there and report it and watch, because you can't really do anything about it. But that would be a really difficult thing, for me. I don't think I could ever make that separation where it's just like, I'm just going to sit here and tell what is going on. And I thought it was a really interesting scene, but then it ends up being, what stops the travesty is him writing about it. And it's like, okay, that's a little cute. You know what I mean? That's a little sugary.
Yeah.
My biggest criticism of it is that Warren Ellis is a better comic book writer than he is a prose writer. And I remember now that one of the things that drives me crazy about this series is that when you read Spider's writing, I'm always like, eh.
Like, famous? Yeah.
It's a little bit of the Studio 60 thing where it's like, these guys are comedy geniuses, and then you watch like the comedy they wrote and you're like, these guys aren't good. Like,
this is not funny at all.
It's like a disconnect where you're like, maybe don't show his writing.
Well, it's also, I remember reading this when I was, in my 20s, and it really fed into my sort of cynicism and built-in hatred of the world. I felt just like Spider Jerusalem. He was, it's like, yeah, and now at almost 50, it's like, well, I'm, it's a little silly. Like, there was still a part of me is like, yeah, fuck the man, like, fuck all politicians, fuck them all full of shit,
you can't be wrong.
Yeah,
saying fuck all politicians. That's my memory of reading Transmetropolitan came flooding back, where I'm like, oh no, that's right. I don't like the actual thing Spider writes. I always think, okay, and I'm always like, maybe don't have quite so much of that in there. But I also like the art looks fucking awesome in it.
I was gonna say we need to talk about Darick Robertson because this book is beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of got like those 90s touches to it, as far as like the dialogue boxes and like the way like the cat, like it's just got those 90s flair to it. But
so one of the things that I noticed is if you can see on the first 3 issues are all the black border, and then the next 3 are white bordered. So those first 3 are that total 90s bleed everything to the edge black border. There was a time whenever everybody was doing that, and it was I think was Spawn.
It was the McFarlane page.
Yeah, it was Spawn that really kind of did that first. But whenever I pulled this out, I'm like, oh, this half is black and this is white. And so I guess after like issue 3, they abandoned the bleed it all the way to the edge, dark bleed cut on everything. But that goes absolutely to that 90s aesthetic you were talking about, Tom.
Yeah, well, just like the little touches that were like, oh yeah, this is what a 90s comic looked like. But the art it looks great. Darick Robertson's great. Like a great storyteller. Like the design of things, of what the future
love
looks like.
His city backgrounds are hilarious. And I would love to have seen what a script page looks like and how much like Warren Ellis would have been, put this in, put that in, have references to this, or if Robertson was just going off on his own, because like the signage, the litter, it's so many, even like this page, which is, Spider's foreground, and there's all of this garbage and
that's
mess.
That's not Darick. I don't think that's Darick Robertson. That's a cover, isn't it?
Oh, is that a bold one? Wait,
I think that's what's his name? Mark Miller, the guy who Quietly. Yeah, Quietly, and what's his name from Chicago? Did covers too.
Darrow,
yes, Jeff Darrow, and quite a young. It must have been a very young Quietly.
Is this Darrow? But what I love about this is that you've got all this hyper detailed stuff, which is very Darrow, cigarette butts and whatnot. And then I don't know if you can see it, but the city is through this window, and the city is obviously all like bright and neon lit, but through that window it's all monochrome. So it puts Spider in the foreground, colored and with all of the different bits of garbage and trash looking out over this monochrome city. And I just thought that was a brilliant use of color and how they laid that out. So yeah, just one of the things that grabbed me.
Yeah, you could spend a lot of time just going, especially when he's in the city, just going through the backgrounds and looking at some of the stuff that, he adds and puts in there to give you that, dystopian, futuristic sort of, Judge Dredd cityscape. But one of the things I noticed that I thought was really interesting is, they used different inkers from like arc to arc and sometimes pages to, or book to book, issue to issue. And I was kind of really amazed at the difference in feel to Darick Robertson's pencils that some of the inkers gave. I was like, wow, there's a really like the first 3 issues are one way, and then like the 4th issue is sort of like it's a lot more fluid. It's a lot smoother of line, and it's like, wow, it's a whole different kind of look. I mean, it all looks great, you know what I mean, but it was just. It was something I don't generally notice too much, but for whatever reason, I just happened to notice the inking like really kind of changing the art quite a bit in this. But overall, yeah, man, the art in it is really holds up well. Especially like I felt like the coloring in the first few issues was
Dick Giordano helped ink one of these.
Oh, there you go. Maybe that's who it was, man.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
I mean, I think it's really great that it still kind of looks like the future.
Yeah,
right. You know what I mean? Like sometimes when you draw the future, like 2 decades can pass, and it's like, that's not the future. Like, it still kind of could be the future. Like it's such an interesting like design aesthetic to it, where it's like, a laptop still looks like a laptop, right? And like,
right.
Like it's like close enough to our world.
The clothes are pretty normal, but just weird enough in some instances, but not like so weird that it'd be like, well, nobody's gonna dress like, because a lot of times like sci-fi movies,
like at what point do we like stop caring about what we look like?
yeah, we're just wearing completely bizarre clothing, but
it's kind of got like it's got like that perfect timeless future look. It's like, oh, that's what the future looks like. That could last forever, even though his laptop is ridiculously huge. Still works.
So is his assistant. Why is his assistant so gigantic?
It's like, things are so much smaller.
So did you guys have it all like? So when I started reading this, and it was the first story arc was all about the transhumans, the transients living in that part of the city and everything, and the way that Spider initially sort of shits all over them, I was like, oh, this like there was part of me that was like, oh, this is not gonna age well. This is gonna be but then
a little bit, and then I think he kind of pulls it back into like his disdain for people in power versus people who are just trying to like live, and like feeling sympathy and empathy for people who are just trying to like survive.
Yeah, it ended up being more about Fred, the Messiah, the guy that was trying to do it for his own.
They didn't hide that one with his name too much, did they?
But yeah, it was interesting. Like I was like, oh, okay, good. I don't have to like
I'd be like,
But there are a lot of things. I mean, obviously, Warren Ellis has had some troubles of late, in his own personal life and professional life. And that was the other thing, like the whole part when he gets the assistant and sort of the relationship with the assistant, this young girl that he's sort of mentoring to be a journalist. I'm like, ooh, this could be bad. This could.
Here this goes.
That's one of the weird things of like reading this stuff now. And when I picked the book, I didn't even really think about it.
Yeah,
like,
the entire time I was just like, "Yep, gonna separate artist from art on this one." So,
yeah, I mean, I kind of don't remember what ends up happening really. I remember.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, so I'm gonna keep reading that, but yeah, I kind of had the same reaction. I was like, where is this gonna go? Like, and then it kind of pulls together. I think it's a little hard it kind of takes a couple issues to like kind of hone in on what Spider's philosophy is, right? Because the first issue is kind of just like, what's he doing? Like
back on the
he's
street.
a madman. He's just
like
hates everything.
There's no like organizing principle to like what the character is about, and that's kind of like where the one-off issues after the first three kind of like, even though they're one-offs, they kind of start like building like what he's about,
Right.
Like, the kicking the money changers out of the temple, or like the, the all these stories kind of Jesus, sort of start creating like, oh, this is what this character's about, like even though it's like a one-off, they kind of builds the playground that he is.
I will say this, like I had two reactions to it. One was like, oh, I'm gonna keep reading this, but also two was like, about 5 issues, 6 issues is all I can take for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can only take so much of Spider's like, very sarcastic, very myopic, look at the world, and it's like, I mean, I love Hunter S.
Exhausting as he is.
It does get to be exhausting, even for a cynic like me. Like, I at some point I'm just like, well, not everyone is a fucking bastard. Not every, and that was the problem I think with Hunter S. Thompson too. It's like, I love Hunter S. Thompson's work, but it also gets to be exhausting because, it's like, and it did for him. Obviously, the world got exhausting for him. It got to the point where he couldn't take it any longer. And it's like, well, then, is it, how healthy is that to how much of that can I take? Or how much of that is, small doses, I think at this point of just like,
well, what I would do, Sal, is that I would read an episode or read maybe like 3 issues of Transmet and then watch an episode of Ted Lasso.
That's a good balance. Yes.
Well, think about how different. I'm trying to think like what else was out in like 97, 98 when this came out. How different that voice, or like, I guess, I don't know. I'm trying to imagine what else I was reading at that time. It's hard for me to piece.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was very much. I mean, who's writing about a journalist in the future?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
like
it's not Clark Kent or Spider-Man.
The fact that this thing ran for however many issues it went is kind of amazing. Just
it's interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna keep reading.
Yes, I definitely want to like go back and finish the whole thing again. Because it was really good. I mean, it is very entertaining and very interesting, but it is sort of something that I'm going to have to take in small doses, I think, because I'm just
You're not going to binge read, like.
No, I can't. I can't take that much.
You're not going to read like 20 of these. Like, let me sit down and just like plow through.
I'll end up. I think it's like, it was like, I remember one point when I first sort of got turned on to Vice News, and like I was watching that. I'm like, if I watch enough of these, I'm going to build a bomb. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna lose it. Like,
you have to separate yourself. Like, what you're falling in. Pretty soon, you're like, on QAnon boards.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's like, what the fuck?
You can feel your brain starting to slip out of alignment.
Can are you on?
Your brain starts to slip out of alignment, and you're just like,
exactly. Exactly. Yes, that's the fear, man. It's like I'm barely holding.
Understand? Don't you understand? Why can't anyone else see that? Obviously, JFK Jr. is.
I have a nephew who is sliding deep into conspiracy theory hole, and it's just like he constantly posts stuff on Facebook, and it's just like I don't have enough time to refute all of this misinformation that you keep posting, and it drives me nuts sometimes. It's just like the last thing he posted was about it was just a meme, and it was like it was a picture of Hitler, and it's like, remember in 1938 Time magazine nominated Hitler for Man of the Year. Not just because it's the media doesn't mean it's reliable. And so I'm like, okay. And I posted this. I posted on it. I'm like, Man of the Year was not an award for the best person. Time magazine was also.
It is the most notable person in the world for that year.
And I was just like, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it's unreliable. I was like, come on.
Well, I'll just say,
person is Hitler.
The whole thing with Spider just kind of wraps up on the last panel of the last page on this trade, where he's basically flipping over the tables in the church, and being his little Masonic figure, and he declares that all I can do is tell the truth, and I think that's Hunter S. Thompson. I think that's Spider Jerusalem in a nutshell. Is that as angry as it made them towards the world, all that they can do is tell the truth, and that's like the driving force behind that character and the person that inspired him, right? Is that kind of what your takeaway is?
Well, I mean, I think with Hunter, it was more all he could tell was his truth. I don't know that it was.
You can tell is your truth, right?
Yeah, I suppose, but yeah, I would think that that's what drives most journalists. I would think that's the truth is what they're searching for, certainly. And I don't remember who it's like the quote that I remember about journalism is like, journalism is telling the stories that people don't want you to tell. Everything else is PR.
Yeah.
And I don't know who said that. I think it might have been the guy, the very famous editor of the Wall Street Journal. I can't remember his name now. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, it's like, Tom, you brought up a really interesting thing about, we're in this weird place now where journalism is not trusted at all. There's no one that everyone trusts like they used to. Like even
there's no Walter channels,
and that trust weans and even changes from day to day. Like who people trust from one day to the next, depending on what they say. It's we're all it's like more people are just looking for that confirmation bias. They just want answers that already, tell them what they believe. And it's got to be really tough to be a journalist these days because, there's one, you're not making any fucking money. And at least that was probably always the case for the most part as a journalist, but at least at one point you might've been respected. And I don't think that's the case really anymore. So I don't know what it says for the future of journalism, because who the fuck's going to want to do this job? But I think there's always going to be those people that have to try and find the truth and tell everyone about it. So, hopefully we continue to have, because I think they are
posting on Parler right now.
Shut up.
Maybe, man. I don't.
Truth finders.
Yeah, I
Here
don't
comes the
know.
Kraken.
I don't know. I don't know who's telling the truth. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. But yeah, it was cool to go back and read it again and
It's damn near an antique, though. 25 years antique, right?
What?
25 years, it's an antique, right? So it's damn near an antique.
Oh yeah, I suppose.
can't
So.
believe
No,
how
we forgot to play our trade talks.
Oh shit!
shit.
Oh, God damn it! We gotta do the whole thing again.
Yeah, we got to start over.
All right, you're gonna go back and edit it. Come on, play it. Play it.
Books worth reading about
every time.
What?
I'm Brian Salazar, and I'm here for my trade talk.
I'm Brian Salazar, and this is a book worth reading.
Book.
That was awesome, Sal. It was a great walk down memory lane. I've got mine ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready for your trade talk. What's your trade talk going to be about?
Is
Can you turn up your mic just a little bit, or get it closer?
Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Better?
No, Tom, you don't have to get closer to this.
Yeah, always tell me that. Yeah. All right. I was actually, so funny story. I had to record the phone message for my company this last week because they knew I was the only person, A, that had a decent microphone at home, and B, would care enough to actually do it and redo it if it was bad. So I am now the official phone message voice for my company.
Which I'm going to call.
I had to use the radio voice.
Hi.
Hello.
Push
and
it.
welcome.
Press 1. Yeah. It was great. All right. So anyway, so this is based on a recommendation that you made on a single issue a few months ago, and the trade came out, I think, last month. So I don't know if you can get this on Hoopla. You're going to have to go and get it from your local comic purveyor or your favorite online purchaser. Sorry, you're going to have to buy the paper on this one, I think. I'm halfway through it. I'm picking this as my trade talk because I'm fucking loving it.
You cheap bastard. Oh, I already read that. Come on.
Really? Well, that's good. Read it again.
All right.
That is on Hoopla.
It is on Hoopla?
It is on Hoopla. Kill Lock, the Kill Lock, Volume 1.
Yeah. So, well, have you read it, Tom?
No, I checked it out. I haven't gotten it yet.
It'll be new for Tom. I still have to finish it up. Sal suggested it, and we'll talk about it in sometime in the next month.
Sounds good.
So there you go. That's my pick.
It's an interesting book, isn't it? I mean, we'll talk about it obviously in depth, but
I'm loving it.
I thought it was an interesting concept.
I love that it's also from a singular creator. It's I'm gonna butcher this. Livio Romadelli,
Sure,
is the creator. So illustrator and does the writing. It's I'm loving it. So go pick it up if you're so inclined, listener and viewer people.
I will add it to the book club on Amazon so that people can purchase it from there if they so choose. And if you haven't joined our book club already, you just go to Amazon and, well, just search for Around Comics book club and find us on there, and you can join. And the book club will just tell you what book we're reading and what books we've read in the past, and you can make suggestions for books in the future if you'd like. Also, as long as I'm talking about stuff, I just want to let people know you can now watch the live feed every week on aroundcomics.com. So I will embed the Twitter or the YouTube feed. So you can just, instead of going to YouTube or going to Facebook or Twitter, if you don't want to go to any of those places, you can just go to aroundcomics.com every week and you can watch the live feed there, as well as go back and listen and watch any of our previous episodes as well.
Awesome.
And buy stuff at aroundcomics.com.
I still need a damn coffee mug.
Yeah, I got a coffee mug somewhere.
Are there pint glasses there?
No, there are no pint glass. I'll look and see if they have any. I don't know if they
Pint glass. Absolutely.
it's through like Spreadshirt or one of those companies. So
okay, nice.
also I want to ask, and I'll ask you guys, but I put this on my Facebook page. But so I used to read a lot of fantasy novels, sword and sorcery kind of stuff, Dungeons and Dragons. The Dragonlance Saga is one of my favorites. And I stopped reading that stuff probably 15 years ago or more. Haven't really read much, so I'm looking for suggestions for stuff, newer stuff. I don't really want to go back necessarily to older stuff. I'd prefer to read, maybe stuff that's been published in the last 5 years or more or less. I did read Game of Thrones, but
and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't read a whole lot of stuff. So if anybody out there has like their favorite sword and sorcery book that they like, please let me know. You can email me or at info@aroundcomics, or you can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or any of those places.
So I saw a couple of the suggestions. One of them is a book that Marta has asked me to read or listen to on my commute, and that's The Lies of Locke Lamora.
Yeah, I saw that. Somebody did suggest that, and that looks.
He
pretty
loves that book. And
yeah, that looks interesting. I put that on my list. It sounded like an interesting book, a little something different.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I think you might the Brandon Sanderson, the Stormlight Archives. I think there's going to be like 7 or 8 of them, and I think
10.
Huh?
It's a 10-part fucking epic.
Okay, you can take your time because it's going to be a few years.
Yeah, but he's going to George R.R. Martin it and never finish it.
No, he's good. He actually puts them out at a decent clip. All right, the Name of the Wind. Be careful of that asshole though, because we've been waiting for that 3rd book for years now. Years.
What is it with these guys? They just announce the trilogy and never fucking finish their books. What the fuck?
Shit. The Name of the Wind is really good though. That's another one that Marta.
Well, I'm not starting any fucking series that isn't finished because I ain't gonna fucking get 2 books into something.
Have you heard of Tolkien?
Have I heard of what?
Tolkien.
Yes, I've heard of Tolkien. Yes.
I hear they're pretty good.
Yeah, no, not really. Not really. They're kind of overwritten.
I think you might like The Lies of Locke Lamora.
Some Tom Bombadil.
I don't know who that is.
Lord of the Rings. It's just
how did he not show up in the extended cut?
This weird ass character. He's just like a singing giant.
Yeah, and you learn his entire life history and his cousins and everything about him you could possibly never want to know.
Huge section. I remember when they announced that they were when Peter Jackson was making Lord of the Rings, and I was like, are they gonna have the Tom Bombadil part in there? Because how are they gonna do that? And they did not. He just
not even
not gonna work in a movie. Not gonna work in a movie.
They made good choices. They made good choices on that. Yeah. I've been enjoying watching those again. They really hold up well. They're very well done for sure. And I don't know. I'm sure someone will come around and do them again at some point in time. But
oh god, no!
Zack Snyder. I want the Zack Snyder cut of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I'll honestly say I don't think that anyone will ever in our lifetime will try and tackle the Lord of the. I think that's like a once and out thing. That's a big lift.
Well, they're supposedly aren't they doing a show? I thought someone was doing a show.
Are they doing the Silmarillion?
I hope not.
Oh god,
that's a horrible book.
Boring as book.
Boring. Yeah, it will be the most boring TV show of all time.
Think of the most boring history book you've read, and then
read it instead of the Silmarillion,
and be like, "Also, it's fake." It's like, well, fuck. It's like a textbook. I remember trying to read that, and I was like, he was a linguist. I mean, he was more interested in like,
creating languages and the
Or,
history of the. Like I say, even Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit is the only one that's not like incredibly overwritten. Like like Lord of the Rings is a fucking you could cut out half of that fucking book. I don't need to know.
It's an epic.
Yeah, Jesus.
It's an epic, baby.
It is. It's a saga.
It is not bound by conventional media platforms.
No.
It's like I'm gonna write everything. It's all.
Well, I mean, you could like if Netflix was gonna make a show out of Lord of the Rings, they would just make it 700 episodes.
Yeah, there's plenty of material. Though surprisingly, they somehow made the Hobbit too long.
Yeah, right.
It's like
one fucking movie, people. One movie. It did not need to be. It did not need to be 3 movies.
It's not a complicated book.
No.
It's not.
They're trying to cash.
Go mountain, kill dragon. Yay! Find ring. It's one movie. It's one movie.
Well, I think a lot of going back to the sword and sorcery books, like fantasy novels, it's the same thing. Like everybody thinks they have to write a trilogy. Like I've been going on Amazon looking up books in the genre, and it's like everything is part 1 of the epic saga. It's like
thank Tolkien for that and Dragonlance.
Yeah. It's like, can anyone just write a fucking book? I don't. It's like you have to. It just you can't even.
How else are you gonna get Spider down from the mountain?
I suppose. All right. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's about. These fucking writers.
Yeah. But try why Loch Lamora? I think that's going to be the next one I tackle after A Promised Land.
All right. Well, I'm working my way through at least the first. I went back to Lord of the Rings, or not Lord of the Rings, Dragonlance.
Really?
Yeah, I started reading the first book again.
How do those hold up?
Extremely well. Extremely well. Well, I mean, it's fantasy, dude. It's not like it's going to be. It's not, you know what I mean? Like you're not going to have it sort of be dated.
Yeah, I tried to go back and read the Elric books.
I never liked those. But there was definitely parts. The funny thing was, like the first part of it, I really enjoy. I love like meeting those characters, and they go to the Inn of the Last Home, and then they get this whole adventure sort of pops up on them and everything, and it's very. It's very fun and it's, it's enough character stuff that you get to know these characters and they have a backstory and a history and everything. But then all of a sudden it gets to this one chapter and I start reading and I'm like, this feels like someone else wrote this. And I know it's Margaret Rice, Tracy Hickman, and I don't know how they shared the writing duties or not, but it was like, I was reading.
Yeah.
It felt like I went from reading like kind of the Lord of the Rings, not as heavy, but just a little more serious. And then it turned into like for 2 chapters or a chapter and a half, it was like Alice in Wonderland. It was like this very sugary, sweet
Xena, warrior princess.
It was just weird. It was just like very like it felt more like a fairy tale story, or like a little kid's fairy tale for a couple of chapters. And I was like, wow, that was weird. Like it was just an odd, sort of just like switch in tone for the book. And then it's kind of went away from that and went back to what it was. And so there were some things that I noticed. And there were some things that I was just like, that probably didn't need to be in there, or that could have been written a little better, that kind of thing. But no, for the most part, man, I mean, I'm really enjoying reading it again, and I'm falling in love with those characters all over again. It's such a great, like, it did such a great job of basically making, a perfect Dungeons and Dragons event. You know what I mean? Like it's this perfect party, this perfect little story. It's like it's the campaign that every D&D player wants to go on.
Yep.
Like you know what I mean? Like if your dungeon master came up with this story and threw you into it, like this would be the greatest D&D campaign you've ever played. And they just did such a great job of really, you know, using the fundamental world and characters of Dungeons and Dragons, but writing a really good fantasy novel at the same time. Like, you know, Sturm is a paladin, but he's not. He's none of the characters are cardboard cutouts, even though they're all, you know, Tanis is a half elf ranger.
You could have rolled every one of those characters up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they all have incredibly interesting backstories. They have a history together. They have things that make them more interesting.
They taught us as D&D players what to aim for in developing your character, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I loved it. And it's still, like I said, reading it again, I was like, oh, this is really, really good. And it's funny because as I started looking for other books to read, and I would like go on Amazon, and you can read like usually the first 10, 12 pages of a book. And so much fantasy stuff is just so fucking like, one, confusing because everyone feels like they have to make up names for every city. Every character has a weird name that you can't pronounce. You know what I mean? Like and they have to try and explain the entire world to you in one paragraph. And it's like, I don't even want to get through. This is fucking boring the shit out of me already. Where like with Dragonlance, it was like the characters had pretty plain names, or at least simple enough names. The places were not confusing or overly confusing where you didn't grasp, you know, they were almost maybe a little too generic to some degree. The Inn of the Last Home. It's not a great name for an inn, but it's easy enough to grasp onto, where it's not like, you know, this bizarre fucking name of a town, you know, that you are, wait, where's that from? This person named Kanganano is from Jingleberry fucking farm, and I'm trying to, you know, I have to have
farm is actually a pretty easy to remember name.
But you know what I mean? It's like I have to have some kind of like flow chart to fucking remember all these characters and where they're from. It's like Game of Thrones. It's like even the TV show, at some point you're watching, it's like, okay, who is this character? How are they connected? Who are they related to? It gets to be so complicated. It's like, just fucking tell a good story. Like, it doesn't, I think fantasy writers get in this habit of like the tropes of the genre,
the character chart. They need, the connect. They need the,
I have to have this, you know, unique name. Every character has to have a unique name. Every character has to have, you know, some strange sounding land that they're from. And it's like, just make it easy. You know, tell me a good story. I'm not going to be like dazzled by the names of your fucking towns that you come up with. You know, that's not going to be a good story to me. Like, just give me good characters and an interesting story, and that'll be enough. I don't need the rest of it.
Absolutely. Speaking of good stories, always like to hear suggestions from viewers and listeners and all that, and what you're reading and what you'd like to hear us talk about. You can get in touch with the show by emailing us at info@aroundcomics.com. You can check us out on the Facebook and the Twitters and the Instagrams and all that.
No TikTok.
Nope. Working on the TikTok. We'll get to the TikTok.
2021, baby.
Yeah,
Tom's going to be doing dances on TikTok.
I'd like to see that. Remember, if you are watching the show, you can listen to it by subscribing through your favorite podcast catcher. If you're listening to this and you'd like to watch it, you can watch it at aroundcomics.com or YouTube. We usually record every Tuesday night about 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. And that's all I got. It's I'm looking forward to reading some comics over a long weekend here and getting back with you guys here before Christmas. And
I got 5 more days of work this year.
Oh,
congratulations!
I'm off the rest of the year. It's going to be nice.
I'm just trying to claw through, man. I may not have to go to Janesville for the rest of the year, which would be glorious. But we do have a potluck next Tuesday. It's rolling the dice on that one. So we'll see if I'm done at work or not. So,
well, yeah, I don't know I don't think we're doing anything as far as I know for any kind of Christmas stuff. So I won't be there anyway because I got to work this week and Monday, and I'm done, and I'm going back.
Nice.
So 2021.
But Tom works all the time.
I'm working all the time, baby.
Tom works.
I'm working right now.
Sleeping. He's working when he's sleeping.
I just like sit back like this with my eyes open.
Oh, speaking of fantasy, I'm getting into the Shadow of War a little bit deeper. The game gets interesting about like 10 hours into the gameplay, which pisses me off a little bit.
Hey Tom, you kind of look a little bit like Spider in the beginning, the man on the mountain. If you
I haven't trimmed my beard in a while. That's fucking long.
Oh, you know what?
Those crazy showers.
Yeah.
Not to jump back in the book, but can you guys remember any other book that introduces a character and then completely changes what he looks like 10 pages in? Like, I don't remember a book. Like, isn't that kind of a weird? Like, he shows you this character and then completely different look. He gets rid of all his hair. He's covered in tattoos. He's wearing a suit. Like, what a bizarre sort of.
I think that was the transformation of he's back in the city now. He's not the mountain.
From Tom Bombadil.
All right, Tom's tired. Let's let him go. Let's let him.
All right.
Enjoy his evening. Everyone, have a great last weekend before Christmas here. We'll be back next Tuesday to chit chat about comics and movies and TV and Tom Bombadil and Tom's beard and all that stuff. In the meantime,
in between time,
we're going to be everywhere. In
and around.
Comics.